What's going on, everybody? This is the first video in a new series that I'm going to be doing, going through all the UFC divisions and ranking them on a tier list depending on how well-rounded I think they are in all aspects of MMA. We're starting with lightweight. We're just because it's pretty current, like the title, the main event from this past weekend was lightweight in the lightweight division. So we're gonna start with lightweight, maybe move to featherweight, bantamweight, flyweight, and then move around. I want to get through all the divisions within the next couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. But like I said, we're starting with lightweight. Let's hop right into it. So first off, let's take who should we go with first? Paddy Pimblett. Oh shit. Paddy Pimblett. Where are we to put Paddy Pimblett? I'm gonna put Paddy kind of right. Where'd he go? Right smack in the middle. We know Paddy Pimblett, his grappling in itself, his jiu-jitsu is really, really good. Really elite, honestly. It's been super impressive to me. The one thing I think he's lacking is, well, not one thing. This is why I put him in some weaknesses, not small hole game. He's lacking in his takedown ability. Like, his takedowns are quite poor. He had a complete inability to get Justin Gaethje to the ground, to actually implement his jiu-jitsu. He's also lacking a bit in his technique with his striking. Obviously, he was able to hurt Michael Chandler, but that's not that impressive. Paddy Pimblett, like I said, once he gets to the ground, his jiu-jitsu is very good. I think he can cause problems with a lot of people in the division, like he has with that. I just think he really needs to focus on his takedowns. Charles Oliveira used to have this problem where his takedowns were really, really poor, and he was putting him into some problems, kind of like Paddy was in his last fight. Charles Oliveira has since then put in a lot of work in his takedowns, and we saw in his past couple of fights, particularly his past one, like he just would grab, body lock him, Max Holloway, and dump him. Against Gamrot, an elite wrestler, really had no problems with the takedowns whatsoever. I think Paddy needs to kind of take that thought and really work on his takedowns, so he won't have problems in the future getting the fight to the area where he finds the most success in, which is the jiu-jitsu. But I think overall he's pretty well-rounded. I don't get concerned for him like he's completely like a fish out of water any realm of fighting. So I'm going to put him right in the middle. Next up, we'll take Faraz Ziam. I'm going to put him right in the same category. I think he's very good. I think he's one of the more underrated fighters in the division. I do, however, think he has some holes. His grappling, I think, still is a little bit untested. He hasn't really fought too many phenomenal grapplers, and he's faced problems. He's been submitted 3 times in his career. It's not something you like to see, especially in a division like this where there's a lot of really good grapplers. I still think he's very good. I think he's young. He's still, working up. And he's 15th. I think he's ranked 15th now, 15th or 14th. He's 28 years old. He's got time. I'm not worried about that for him yet, but I think he does need to work on his grappling. I think he has. I think he's a very good fighter. I'm looking forward to his next fight. I just think he does have some problems that he needs to focus on, but it's not an end of the world thing where he's towards the end of his career. He's like 35 and he doesn't have time to work on them. But at this point in his career, like you said, it's a concern for him in the grappling. Based on his previous fights, he's gotten submitted by Terrence McKinney. That's not something that's ideal, to say the least. Let's go to Benoit Saint-Denis. I'm going to put him in a small hole in the game. I think Benoit Saint-Denis is genuinely really well-rounded. I think his striking is quite good. We've seen he's got good kicks. He's got pretty damn good power in his hand. Put Beneil Dariush out within like 30 seconds with a right hook. And then, of course, we know his grappling is absolutely just mauling. He submitted Mauricio Rufy. Was it when he fought Dan Hooker? Was it a submission or strikes? I think it was strikes. Pretty sure. Off the top of my head, I can't really remember right now. But I think he's one of the more well-rounded fighters in the division. Yes, he's lost to Dustin Poirier, but it was like they put him up there quick. He lost to Moicano too, but Moicano just had the perfect game plan and just did so much damage to him in the first round. Genuinely, I think he could have continued fighting, but his face was just destroyed, and they stopped the fight, doctor stoppage. But they put him up against Dustin Poirier. It was just too quick, and we know how good Dustin is. And Benoit was having some success in the fight, but he just got caught. We know Dustin Poirier is an insanely good boxer. And like I said, they put him up into that fight way too quickly. It was crazy. We got Dustin Poirier at like plus money in that fight. I think we're going to get something similar to that based on what happened to Max Holloway in this past fight. I think Max Holloway in his next fight, which I'm going to guess is going to be against Paddy Pimblett, we're going to get him in plus money, and it's going to be free because I think he beats Paddy Pimblett in a similar way that when Dustin Poirier had lost and he came back against a young guy or a newer guy, and Benoit Saint-Denis, it's just too quick for them. So I think Benoit Saint-Denis overall is pretty damn well rounded. I think he's comfortable everywhere, and his pressure is really a problem for a lot of people, like we've seen in recent fights. But yeah, let's move on to guy Benoit Saint-Denis just fought. I'm gonna put him Hooker and has some weaknesses. Listen, I think Dan Hooker is a really good fighter. I do. I'm not a big fan of him, but I think he's a good fighter. He's caused problems for a lot of people. Gamrot beat him. His last fight against Arman Tsarukyan. That's the level of grappling where Dan Hooker can't stop. A little bit less of a well-rounded fighter and lesser of a grappler. I think Dan Hooker can cause a lot of problems for, like a Paddy Pimblett. Dan Hooker could possibly cause a lot of problems for. We know his striking is very good. A lot of volume. He does hit pretty hard. Elbows good. He's got a underrated grappling, I'd say. Yes, obviously he's losing in the grappling to a lot of fighters, but these fighters are elite of the elite. But someone who maybe just a little bit less than that in overall grappling, but pure wrestling, Gamrot's elite, but overall grappling not so much. Dan Hooker is able to defend against that pretty well. And like I said, Dan Hooker's striking is very good. His cardio, his pressure, very good. Just I think he's got quite a bit of holes in his game. And at this point in his career, I don't think they're going to get patched up. Like I said for Faraz Ziem previously, I think that at 28 years old, you have a ton of time still to make changes, make improvements in your game. Dan Hooker's like 35 maybe or something like that. 34, 35, I don't know exactly. But at this point, you're not gonna fix those things. So I'm gonna put him there, and I think he's gonna stay there for the rest of his career. Let's take who's next? Beneil Dariush. I'm gonna put him and has some weaknesses as well. And like this, here's the thing, right? Beneil Dariush for a while there was an absolute killer, and I still think he is very good. I just don't think physically he has the ability to do what he can technically, if that makes sense. Like, I think technically he's a really good striker. Technically, he's a really good grappler. His wrestling is really good. Him and Moicano had a really good fight. And Moicano's no slump. Dariush, like I said, I think technically he's very, very good. I just don't think physically he's able to compete with the guys at the top. He gets hit, he goes out. He really does. Obviously, Benoit Saint-Denis hits hard. Charles Oliveira hits hard. Arman Tsarukyan hits hard. Moicano hits hard. Kinda. Maybe not hard, but he just gets dropped way too easy. He's just not physically there at this point. But I think technically he is. He's very well rounded technically. I just don't think he's physically able to implement his game, which is really unfortunate to see something like that. But so I'm gonna have to put him there. Let me see. Let's take someone. Max Holloway. I'm going to put him in a small hole in the game. And hear me out. I think, after this last weekend, it looks like Max Holloway has a complete and utter inability to grapple. I just don't think that's true. Listen, Charles Oliveira, we know how good he is. We know he can do that to like 99% of the lightweights in the world. I don't think that we have to shit on Max Holloway just because Charles Oliveira dominated him on the ground for 4 rounds. For 5 rounds, I guess, but 20 minutes. Max Holloway, still an elite striker, even though he's getting outstruck by Charles Oliveira. Still an elite striker. Arguably a top 5 striker in the UFC. Just his jiu-jitsu is just not on that level. I think if he were to fight a grappler who's a little bit lesser of elite, like a Paddy Pimblett or like a Benoit Saint-Denis or like a Beneil Dariush, who are still very, very elite grapplers, I think he would give them all the problems in the world. I genuinely think he would. I just don't think that this matchup was good for him. And it kind of sucks because people were saying, "Oh, Holloway is going to smoke Oliveira," and when that completely it was a complete opposite case, it makes Max Holloway look even worse. So yeah, I still do think he's very good. I think he's very well rounded. I just think that one round he's just not elite enough to compete with a guy like Charles Oliveira, who most people can't. Next up, let's take Michael Chandler and put him right smack in Michael Chandler, because Michael Chandler, listen, objectively, I think, is not a very good fighter. He's got decent wrestling, but he's just genuinely just like a little ball of muscle, a little powerhouse. He's just he is a one-trick pony in the fact that he's just going to swing with 100% power. He's got good cardio. That's it. He's not technically sound in his jiu-jitsu. He's not technically sound in his striking. He's not technically sound even that much in his wrestling anymore. I feel like he doesn't really use it. Like I said, he has decent wrestling, but that's genuinely about it. Yeah, he's not. He's here because he's a big name. He knows how to talk in the mic, and he was doing well outside the UFC. But I think at this point he's older now too. He's as good as anyone. He's stronger than probably the entire lightweight division, but that only means so much when you can get strangled or knocked out. If you're getting out techniqued by Paddy Pimblett everywhere, that's not that Paddy Pimblett has horrible technique, but it's just not a good look. Let's take Mauricio Rufy. I'm gonna put him in a small holes game. I'm gonna put him behind Benoit Saint-Denis for a reason. Obviously he got submitted by Benoit Saint-Denis. I think and I think he will continue to make improvements in his game since then. I think that fight might be able to go a little differently. Now, obviously on the feet, Mauricio Rufy is an absolute world beater. Knocking out Rafael Fiziev like he did is a freaking accomplishment, to say the least. That's really hard to do. A lot of people have not been able to do that, including elite fighters like Justin Gaethje, who has fought him twice and wasn't able to put him out like that. Mauricio Rufy, like I said, on the feet, kickboxing, boxing, absolutely elite. I don't think his grappling is that bad. I just think it needs work. I do think with a little bit of work, he could be at near the top of this division, well-rounded, and it's just because how good his striking is. Yeah. Next up, let's take Gamrot. His striking, I gotta put someone in this category. I kind of only wanted 4 categories, but this is it'll do. I'm gonna put him there just because I don't think his striking isn't that bad. I just don't think it's effective. In a sense, technique pretty damn good, but he just doesn't have the power. His striking isn't super effective. His wrestling is very good. Pure wrestling, you hear it a lot. Pure wrestling, Gamrot might be the best in the UFC, top 3, at least. He out-wrestled Arman Tsarukyan. That's why Arman Tsarukyan lost that fight, because Arman Tsarukyan tried to freestyle wrestle with Gamrot, not fight MMA. Gamrot, elite wrestling, arguably the best. Just anywhere else, he just doesn't really have it to the level that other fighters do. Like I said, technique when it comes to striking is not bad. Just doesn't have the power, just doesn't have the pop, just doesn't have the well-roundedness in his striking, in a sense, to really give people problems. So I'm going to put him there. Manuel Torres, honestly, I think is really good. I think he might be one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC, especially in this division. I think he's 14th in the division right now. I think, the fight with Beneil Dariush kind of just doesn't make any sense. It's kind of disgusting. Manuel Torres is going to take his head off. I mean, we could get a crafty Beneil Dariush decision. It's possible, but dude, he hits so fucking hard. I mean, he really does hit so hard. And I think he's going to take Beneil Dariush's head off. Like, if he connects with Beneil, it's over. I'm genuinely concerned for Beneil Dariush's life. Genuinely concerned. But, yeah. Rafael Fiziev. I kind of want to put him in one-trick pony as well. And hear me out. His striking, his Muay Thai is really good. It really is. Some of the best, if not the best, Muay Thai in the UFC. However, Muay Thai and MMA just does not work that well. We've seen that against, particularly in the two Justin Gaethje's fight, and now in the Mauricio Rufy fight. You're just too stationary. You're unable to move around. You're too able to get hit. With the 4-ounce gloves, it's a different type of pop than the gloves. The bigger gloves. You're not able to eat those shots. His grappling is decent, but it's nothing that's really able to contend with a guy like if he were to fight Charles Oliveira. I think if he were to have gone and fought Charles Oliveira in Brazil instead of Gamrot, I think it would have been a round 1 submission instead of a round 2 submission. Not that his grappling is completely awful. I think it's all right. It's not able to contend with the, I think if he were to fight Moicano, it'd be a problem. Charles Oliveira would be a problem. Ilia could out-grapple him. Benoit Saint-Denis could out-grapple him. Patty could out-grapple him. A lot of these fighters, he just doesn't have that ability. And then on the feet even, where he is elite in his Muay Thai, like I said, just does not translate well to the MMA. Just the leg kicks will eat you up. You're too stationary, So I think I'm going to put Rafael Fiziev in one-trick pony. All right, moving on. Justin Gaethje. I'm going to put him right here. I think the thing about Justin Gaethje, right? I mean, we've seen him fight the most elite of fighters in the UFC. His striking is really effective. It's a lot of times not super technical because he overswings and stuff like that. As we saw, especially in the Charles Oliveira fight, he was just swinging to the point where he'd fall over on his side. Against Paddy Pimblett, his striking was super effective, but it looked sloppy. And I think this is the biggest concern for the fight against Ilia Topuria. He's just going to leave himself too open. But it is effective. He has really good kicks. His boxing is solid. It's effective. His wrestling, I almost want to put him in small hole game. His wrestling is really good. He doesn't use it, but his defensive wrestling is pretty damn good. He did use his wrestling in a not super common way against Paddy Pimblett, where he really used that front headlock position a lot to control and get strikes off. I think that could be maybe effective against Ilia Topuria. I'm not sure if it will go there, but I'd like to see. I like that out of him. I thought it was really effective at controlling time, getting damage off, especially with. He talks about he doesn't want to use his wrestling a lot because it's so damn tiring, and I get that. So that position is it's not super tiring to get to. It's not super tiring to hold. The biggest problem with Justin Gaethje, which we've seen forever, is his jiu-jitsu is almost non-existent in the UFC. Against Khabib, he didn't lose because of the wrestling. He lost because of his ability to defend submissions. Against Charles Oliveira, he got rocked and then just Charles Oliveira chained submissions on him. I'm going to put him up I think I'm going to put him up here, honestly, with small hole in his game. I'm going to put him there. This is tough. Yeah, I'm going to put him there. I think if his jiu-jitsu improved, he would be super well-rounded. I think as he's getting older, he's getting a little sloppier in certain areas. I think that just happens, and it can cause problems. Especially as you're getting older, you want to be more and more technical to make up for the lack of ability physically. But, yeah, I think I think his wrestling is super good. Striking, super solid, all over. His kicks, that's one of the things that he was able to use best. People I think generally overrate his power when it comes from boxing a little bit, because a lot of his finishes have come from kicks, which I think could pose some problems for Ilia. I'm not going to get into that yet. That's quite a bit of ways. But I think his kicks could pose some problems for Ilia. We've seen Ilia struggle with heavy kickers in the past. So we'll see about that. Let's do Ilia Topuria next. We're going to put him elite nearly everywhere. I think, I think people overrate his jiu-jitsu a little bit. And hear me out. Because we haven't seen it really too much. Yes, earlier in his career, we saw a little bit, but not against UFC caliber fighters too much. But I still do believe in it quite a bit. His wrestling is very good. He was able to do something similar to Oliveira, to Max Holloway, where he just picks him up and dumps him. So I think his Greco-Roman wrestling is very, very good. Obviously striking. He's not super, doesn't have a ton of variety in his striking, but what he does, which I think is smart, it's just what he does is so elite in itself. His boxing is just so elite. He doesn't throw head kicks, body kicks really even, just leg kicks and just pure boxing, and it's so effective. It's not even the most technical. It is pretty technical, but he overswings a lot, but it's just so effective. He knows when to really uncork. When he's got you against the fence, we saw against Max Holloway, he saw against Volk. He just knows when to uncork. I don't even think that he so much was like, I don't think he's what knocked out Charles Oliveira. I think Charles Oliveira like genuinely gave him that knockout by stepping into range just naked with a right hand. But it was there and he got it, and that's what really kind of his game is on. He's going to capitalize on your mistakes. And I think that's something he does so well. Renato Moicano, I'm going to put him in has some weaknesses. I think he is really well-rounded. I genuinely do. His striking is quite effective. Doesn't have the most pop in his hands, but it's quite effective. His grappling is really, really good. Yeah, he got submitted by Islam Makhachev, but so does, a lot of pretty much everyone, including Charles Oliveira. But I think his grappling is really effective. We see him. I kind of want to almost put him up a little more. I'm gonna put him here. I think physically, he's one of those guys like physically, kind of doesn't have it. I think, but I said his grappling is super effective. He was able to put a beat down on Benoit Saint-Denis. I think if they rematch now, though, I think that fight would go differently. But with that being said, it's still the truth. He was able to do that. I think his grappling overall is really good. His control is really good. His submission game is very solid. Yes, he lost that fight to Beneil Dariush. I think if they were to rematch right now, I think it would go differently. I do. Moicano probably should have finished in the first when he knocked him down. Just wasn't able to. I still do think I want to move him down a little bit. I don't know. This is tough. I think his grappling is some of the better in the UFC. I think in the division especially, I think he really does have good jiu-jitsu and really good control. And I like the way that he throws ground and pound while he's working in the grappling. Not enough fighters do that. They're kind of just either focus on the ground and pound or focus on the submissions and don't chain it together too well, which something like Charles Oliveira does really well. And last but certainly not least, especially after this past performance, Charles Oliveira, I feel like genuinely later, as you get further and further in his career, you have to give him credit where it's due. He is so well-rounded, man. Listen, his wrestling was always a problem, and it's improved so much. We've seen that in his past couple fights. It's improved drastically. His takedowns have gotten so much cleaner. We've seen it against Max Holloway now. Against Gamrot, he out-wrestled Gamrot. What was the fight before that? Ilia Topuria, but before that was... I forget. Anyways, Charles Oliveira. Why am I forgetting that? Oh, Arman Tsarukyan? No. Maybe it was Arman Tsarukyan. I don't even know, bro. Anyways, his striking, he outstruck Max Holloway. In striking. Like, he outstruck Max Holloway. He hurt him so much. His power, dude. He must hit so freaking hard. Because, listen, yes, Ilia Topuria got the perfect shot on Max Holloway. And that's his game. He's not winning until he does, right? Ilia Topuria is often not winning until he finds that perfect shot. He backs you up and finds that perfect shot right in the tip of your chin and puts you out cold. Charles Oliveira, unlike Ilia Topuria, whenever he was hitting Max Holloway, it was hurting him. You could see it on Max's face. He's like I think it shocked Max Holloway really bad, the amount that Charles Oliveira was hurting him with each individual strike. I genuinely think he hits harder than... I know people might comment on this, but I think he hits harder than Ilia Topuria. I just think Ilia Topuria finds that perfect shot right in the tip of your chin to put you out perfectly. Because that's what we said. That saying from Conor McGregor from years ago: precision beats power and timing beats speed. And I think Charles Oliveira has more power than Ilia Topuria, but I think Ilia Topuria's striking is cleaner, and that's why he's able to find those picture-perfect knockouts. But I really do think Charles Oliveira... Oh, I forgot Arman Tsarukyan, huh? Hold on, let me pause. But I think Charles Oliveira is genuinely one of easily top 3 most well-rounded in the division. I think, he can grapple with absolutely anyone. He submit anyone. I genuinely do think I want a rematch with Ilia Topuria for Oliveira. I really do. I think obviously, Ilia's got to fight Gaethje and get through him, which I think it's likely that he does. Though it would be pretty sick to see Justin Gaethje beat him. But I think the fight for Charles Oliveira to make is against Arman Tsarukyan. And whoever wins that fight is obviously 100% deserving for a title shot. You could argue that either of them are already, but Justin Gaethje is getting the title shot, and I think they should fight in the meantime just to make it certain who deserves it. And like I said, Charles Oliveira, absolutely elite everywhere. And I think Arman is pretty damn good everywhere too. I think his submission grappling is really good. I think his wrestling is really good. His striking is solid. I think I've still not seen enough of it, but I am willing to put him in elite nearly everywhere. I think he would struggle striking with Max Holloway though. But when it comes, he has that ability to take Max Holloway down. I think he would not struggle to take Max Holloway down at all. I don't know if he would hold Max Holloway down as well as Charles Oliveira did. I don't think his control on the ground is as good as Charles's, but I still do think he's worth putting in elite nearly everywhere. His kicks are very good, and his ability to throw ground and pound on the ground is maybe the best in the division. I would probably put it there. He pushes to finish fights. His wrestling, like I said, is really, really good. His takedowns, absolutely elite. Maybe the best pure wrestling in the division besides Gamrot, but Arman is better everywhere else. And once it gets to anything on the actual ground in grappling, not just pure wrestling, Arman is drastically better than Mateusz Gamrot. Like I said, he would have beaten Mateusz Gamrot if he wasn't just trying to freestyle wrestle with him, but he did. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this list. I think the middle two I'm perfectly happy with the top column. I think the middle 2 columns you can move around a little bit. It's hard, man. Like Mauricio Rufus, I don't know, man, but I'm pretty happy with this. I don't mind this for whatever myself. If you think I completely messed anything up, let me know, but I'm pretty happy with this. Like I said, this is going to be a new series. I'm going to be going through all of the divisions and ranking the fighters on their well-roundedness, just starting with lightweight, as it's pretty current. Like I said, the main event this past weekend between Charles and Max was at lightweight, so I figured we'd do this. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys could like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Working to get 250 subscribers before the midway point of the year. So, yeah, appreciate you guys. Have a good day.